Hello everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Kickstarter Weekly. This week's episode is going to look at campaigns that are completing their funding between September the 12th and the 18th. If this is your first time here, then welcome. The last few weeks have been fairly light with campaigns, and I don't feel the need to load these up with campaigns if they're not campaigns that I want to recommend to you. This week I actually have 9 campaigns to talk to you about. And then next week I'll have a double-sized video covering 2 weeks because I'll be out of town visiting family in Buffalo where I haven't been in a few years. So I won't be putting out a video while I'm gone, which means next week's video will cover that week and the following week. And right now I'm looking at about 15 different campaigns potentially for that video. So we just have gone through a period where there weren't as many campaigns, and we're coming into a period where there are more campaigns. I'm not going to cut campaigns if there are a lot of campaigns out at one time, just to make the video shorter. And by the same token, I'm not going to bloat the video with campaigns that I don't want to recommend to you just because there aren't that many out there. So these videos are just going to flow with the campaigns that I actually do want to recommend to you, and today I have 9 of those. Now I have 5 played games that I'm going to talk to you about before we get to the campaign games, and I've actually been pretty busy, so a lot of these games I've played a handful of times each in the last week. I only recommended one campaign last week, which was for a game called Barbaric. I did not personally back that one, so there's nothing to talk about in the personally backed section this week. And I only have one acquired game, so I'll mention that at the end of the video. And also, please remember to like and subscribe, especially if you want to see this kind of content continue in the future. We have a lot of games to talk about, so let's get started with the played games for this week. So first up on the played games list is a game called The Loop. This is a lighter cooperative game. I'd played it once before and talked about it. I didn't love it at that time, but the game comes with 4 different scenarios, so I wanted to play through all of the scenarios. Kristen and I went back, we played the first scenario again, we both enjoyed it. We got to the second scenario, we played that a couple of times, we failed at it each time, and then Kristen decided that she doesn't want to play the game anymore. So I am going to complete those scenarios on my own in solo mode. And I'll talk about the game again once I've completed solo mode, but I can say that the game is really growing on me, and I like the gameplay of it. In this game, everybody has a different character, and you are trying to defeat the evil Dr. Foe and his time-traveling shenanigans. So what this mainly entails is that you'll be on a big rondel board that you can move around, and you'll be trying to eliminate red cubes that come onto the board that can sabotage you, as well as Dr. Foe's clones that keep appearing as he's traveling around in time. So you'll need to remove those from the board whenever possible. They're bad. Then you'll have these missions that keep appearing, and you'll need to complete a series of these missions. They have to do with different components on the board. Some of them have to do with producing green cubes, which are things that you can do to help you move. You can also use them to reset cards, so you can use cards more than once in your turn. Other missions might include killing off clones in all of the different zones, things like that. And these missions will come up, you'll have 2 at any one time. And in the first scenario, you're trying to complete 4 of these missions. Once you do, boom, you're done. The other 3 scenarios add in more mechanics and additional tokens and things to give the game a little bit more variability. So when I first played this and talked about it, I didn't like it nearly as much as Horrified, which I think is a better game as a go-to cooperative game if you're trying to play with light gamers or non-gamers or newer gamers. And I think I would still say that I preferred Horrified, and I think Horrified is the better co-op to easily teach and play. There's just a little more going on in The Loop. There are a lot of pieces. It can get kind of fiddly in the setup, and you might have rules questions as you're playing it for the first couple of times. There's a lot going on. It's not a heavy game by any means, but there's more going on than in something like Horrified. And the theme doesn't come through as much, and it's not necessarily as intuitive in the way that the game works. So I still would say that Horrified is kind of my go-to light co-op. I think it's replaced the Forbidden games for me, although I still do have Forbidden Island, and I'm kind of on the line of whether I should get rid of it or hold on to it. The loop is something that I think I do want to hold on to. And the reason is that I think the gameplay is very compelling and it has good choices, probably even more so than Horrified. But I do think that it makes it a little bit difficult to get to the table with newer gamers, and those are kind of the people that I'd want to play it with. I do really like the graphic design of the loop, and I like the way that the cards work. So you're going to have 6 starter cards for any of the characters that you play with. You will get 3 cards. They're kind of like your hand. And then when you use them during your turn, you'll essentially tap them, like in Magic the Gathering. There are ways that you can then untap them by using green cubes that are on the board. And if you do that, you'll get extra usage. And you can do that over and over, but every time you untap a card, it's going to cost you more green cubes. It escalates. So there will reach a point where you cannot recharge the cards anymore. But overall, I think the graphic design of the game and the ways that the cards work and work together are really, really fun and compelling. The game's just kind of a joy to play. It's got clever, funny, cute, well-written cards. It's just a lot of fun to play. So I'm actually raising my score from the loop to an 8.0. And I think if you like light co-ops, this could even be a 10 for you. It's just that I tend to prefer heavier games. But I do want to keep this in my collection. I think for the long term. I'm liking it so much now that I'm curious about the expansion, which gives you more characters to play with, and I think more scenarios. But I need to solo through it now, since I know that it's a game that I won't be playing with Kristen. And because she's kind of my main co-player for games like this, that does raise a little bit more of a question of whether I should keep it, because I'll only be playing it solo. I think maybe if we have friends over, I could get her to play it again. I think that she might enjoy it just for the game itself. I know she likes the game itself. I just think the winning conditions for her beyond the first scenario are frustrating. She doesn't like to lose games a lot. So games where you have to kind of replay a scenario many, many times to win it are not games that she enjoys. So something like Ghost Stories is not a game that she would want to play. This is nowhere near as difficult as Ghost Stories, but I think she likes to win most of her plays. So this may not be a game that she comes back to often. But for me, it's an 8.0. I think I'd recommend it to most gamers who like lighter co-op games, unless like Kristen, they like to win most of their games. Because as you get into the higher levels of the loop, the more difficult scenarios is going to become very difficult to win. And that's just the starting difficulty. There are ways in the game to increase to a level 2 and level 3 difficulty. So this is the kind of game that if you enjoy the gameplay and you don't mind losing, you're going to have a lot of game in this box. You're going to be able to keep coming back to it and playing it a lot, trying to beat it, if you don't mind losing. We also started our campaign for My City, which is one of the last 2 games that I have left to play from 2020. This is a very light tile-laying game from Reiner Knizia. It's also a legacy game. And it's a very head-down kind of multiplayer solitaire game. So when you play this, you're going to be building a little village on a player board. And you get extra points if there are trees that you don't cover. You lose points if there are rocks that you don't cover. And you lose points for every green space that you don't cover. And the game is designed so there are 24 games. They are in 8 sets of 3, so they're kind of chapters, 8 chapters, and each chapter kind of has a theme to it. So we've played through the first 6 games, and I'm really enjoying it. The games are fairly quick, so it doesn't really overstay its welcome in that sense. 24 games is a lot of games, though, especially when the puzzle that you're doing, the kind of Tetris polyomino puzzle, doesn't change too much from game to game. It can get repetitive. Luckily for me, I'm really enjoying it so far. But I think Kristen, at the idea that this was going to be a 24-game campaign, her eyes got a little big and she felt a little overwhelmed, I think, that it would be so many games. But we did play through the first 6 games in 2 days. So I think if we were to play a game a day, it would be a fun thing to do over coffee. The games wouldn't take more than half an hour, and you'd be done in less than a month. So it could just be a fun little morning thing you do every day. I'm going to rate My City a 7.5. I am 25% of the way through the Legacy campaign, so we'll see where it goes from there. I do like polyomino games. I think my favorite is probably the Isle of Cats. But I like a lot of the Uwe Rosenberg games too. Patchwork is another really good one. And Curious Cargo, I love. That's a little heavier. It's got a lot more rules to it, though. We're just about to open up the third envelope of 8 and go into the next group of 3 games. And we'll see. We'll see how the game evolves over the last 75% of its campaign. But for now, I'm rating it a 7.5. It is a very fun, simple, easy to teach, easy to play, tile placement polyomino game. I think it's 2 to 4 players. I'm not sure if you can play it solo as the campaign, but maybe you can. So 2 to 4 players, and it's basically language independent. There aren't really any cards or anything with language on it. So you could play it with people who don't even speak the same language. I have a friend who played it with his parents who I don't think speak much English. So it was a great game for that family, 4 of them, to play together because they didn't have to worry about cards or reading things that certain members of the family didn't read well or speak. We also played Port Royal, which is an earlier Alexander Pfister game. It is a very simple card game. It's essentially a press your luck game where you're flipping cards over into a row, kind of like a market. There are 4 different kinds of cards that come out. There are expedition cards. If those come out, you put them aside and you can buy them later with some of your other cards if you have the right symbols on them. If a tax card comes out, players might be taxed on the money that they have. And then the other 2 types of cards are ship cards and people, basically. So when you're bringing these cards out, once you decide to stop your turn, which you can do whenever, you will then be able to buy cards in the second phase of your turn. And there are 5 different colored ships in the deck. If at any time there are 3 or fewer ship colors present in the market during the second phase of your turn, you can purchase 1 card. When I say purchase, I mean that you can hire one of the people by paying the money on that card, or you can trade with a ship and get the money for that card and then just kind of dismiss it from the market. When you do that, the strength of that market decreases because, like I said, you are taking 1 card if there's 0 to 3 ships of different colors, 2 cards if there's 4 ships of different colors, and 3 cards if there's 5 ships with different colors in that market. The problem is there are only 5 different colors of ships, and there are many copies of all of these colors of ships. And when you're doing that first part of the game, if you ever get a second type of the same ship that you cannot repel with icons that you already have in your player area, then you bust. The whole market goes away. You don't get to take any cards that turn, and you get 1 coin in compensation. So it is a very simple game of sort of card flipping and press your luck, and then buying things from the market for victory points. And then when a player has 12 victory points, they trigger at the end of the game. So I think for both of this game was a little bit too simple. It does what it's doing very well. I just want more out of my game. So I am rating the base game of Port Royal a 5.5. But keep in mind, I played the big box. The big box has a standalone game. It has a couple of expansions. There's 1 expansion that you can play solo or cooperatively. And then there is another expansion that is kind of story themed. So you're having a narrative cooperative experience while you're playing that that's kind of based around missions. So I think we are going to come back to this and play this in the cooperative modes. And I have a feeling that we're going to like the game better in those modes. So my score of 5.5 only really pertains to the very simple base game, the competitive game, drawing cards, trying not to bust, and getting points. When I do play the solo and competitive stuff in the future, I'll come back and I'll give the overall big box a rating. So my 5.5 is just for that simple version of the base game. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned this from the top, but I played the loop 3 times. I played My City 6 times. I played that base game of Port Royal once. And the next game that I'm going to be talking about, Sprawlopolis, I played 6 times. Now, this is a game from Button Shy. It's a card game. It fits in a wallet. I have the original game with 4 expansions. One of those is called Construction Zones. It has 4 cards in it. One of those is called Beaches, which also has 4 cards in it. Or I think it might be 6. It might be 6 cards for each of those 2 expansions. And then there are 2 other expansions. One is called Rectar, and another one's called Points of Interest. And those 2 expansions are 1-card expansions. So I played the base game, and then I think I played it with beaches, and then I played it with construction zones, and I played it with all of the different expansions to get a feel for all of them. I will say that as far as button-shy games go, Tussie Mussie is another one, and I'm going to be talking about that one in just a second. But I think as far as button-shy games go, this one is my favorite so far. And it is a game, I believe it's meant to be played solo. I think you may be able to play it with more players, but I think it's really more of a solo game. And it works really well for that. In previous weeks, I talked about a game called Strawberry Sunset, which was another tile placement game with cards, and I mentioned how the way that game was designed, it made it very hard to play because the cards would spin and move a little bit as you placed them, and the things that you scored became difficult to score with the movement of cards. It was very particular how they kind of had to align, and it made the game very fiddly to the point that I don't think Strawberry Sunset is worth playing or owning. I would play it if there was like an app version, because in that the cards could then snap into place and not move, and I think a digital version for Strawberry Sunset would work really well. Sprawlopolis, sorry to take so long to get back to this, Sprawlopolis didn't have those problems. It also scores based on how you place the cards, but the graphic design just works better, and if the cards shift a little bit, that's not going to be a problem with this one. I also think that there is enough variability in the game, and with the expansions, if you want to throw those in, that it will give you a puzzle that you can replay quite a bit. That's saying a lot for a game that is this wallet-sized 18-card game. Now, it's not a game that I'd probably reach for when I have other solo games and kind of bigger games at my disposal, but I think because Sprawlopolis fits in a wallet, this is a great game for you to take while traveling, and it is still going to have, good little choices and will give you little compelling games. So for me, it's really at the top of Button Shy's output, and I would recommend it to people who like simple solo games, still have some good choices, but it's not a long game, it's not a huge meal of a game, it's just a nice snack that you can pull out from time to time, and I think it does really well for what it is. So for me, I'm going to give Sprawlopolis a 6.5. Reflecting that that's not a game I'm going to reach for that much, but it's still a game that I enjoy when I play it, and I think that it has some pretty good choices in it. So if you're looking for a smaller game like that with a smaller footprint, maybe something solo, you should definitely check out the Button Shy library, and they do Kickstarter campaigns every few months with new games and games that they're kind of reprinting in their collection, but you can also just order from them directly. And I would take a look at Sprawlopolis, but they have a lot of other games, and you may find other games that appeal to you there as well. The final game that I played this week, I played a couple times, twice, and that was Tussie Mussie, the Flower Shop expansion. So this is the solo mode for Tussie Mussie. Now, I like Tussie Mussie. I really like Elizabeth Hargrave as a designer. She did Wingspan, which I think is fantastic, Mariposas, which I think is not so great, and Tussie Mussie, which is, I guess, in the middle, maybe more towards Mariposas, but it is another Button Shy wallet game. It takes up very limited table space. It's something that you could play on an airplane even, and I think that when you're playing it, it feels like you're making interesting choices. There's a lot of randomness in the game, so there are quite a number of times where you don't have information. You're just kind of operating within the realm of mystery. So it's not super strategic. There is a lot of luck in it. It is fun to play, and the art is fantastic on the cards. It's a flower-themed game. It has really fun card art. But the game is really meant to be played 2 players, and I think that's where it shines. Games still with 2 players are going to probably take 5 minutes or so. They're very quick games. And I think converting it to solo mode, it actually works well as a solo game. It's just so short, and part of what makes the game shine to me is that 2-player experience and the kind of give and take in that dynamic. So as a solo game, it's just not something that I want to sit down and play a lot of super short games with a good deal of randomness in them. So for me, Tussie Mussie, Flower Shop, I'm going to rate it a 5.5. I think there are other people out there that will like it. I do like the game in general. I just think it's limited, but if you love the game, maybe you want the solo version. And it's not bad, it's just small and short, but that's also its kind of purpose. It's designed for that. So if you are looking for a game that does that, it does it well. But if you are looking for a good game, this one does have limitations, a lot of limitations, just based on its design and the quickness and shortness of it. So that wraps up the played games for this week. The Loop comes in with an 8.0, My City with a 7.5, Port Royal, the base game, with a 5.5, Sprawlopolis with a 6.5, and Tussie Mussie Flower Shop, which is the solo mode, with a 5.0. And that brings us up to our 9 campaigns that we're going to be talking about this video, so let's keep moving forward. Our first campaign is over on Gamefound. It is a game with a very long title for this campaign. It's called Powerline by Dirk, Henn, Queen Games, Green Planet Game 1. And this is going to complete its funding on Tuesday, September 13th. Now, this game had a minimum required funding of $5,000. They're up at about $8,000, which is about 1.5 times that minimum required funding goal. Now, there's a lot to recommend about this game. It is very simple, but I think it has some really good choices. So it's going to be one of those games that not a lot of overhead, not a lot of table space, not hard to teach and quick to play. And I think for a shorter game like that, there's actually some really good decisions to be made in here. But it hasn't really funded that much. It's funded, but it hasn't funded that well. It's only at $8,000. And I think Queen Games, which is a pretty well-known publisher, would probably like the first game in their Echo series, this green published series, where they're going to be trying to publish it using greener methods and more sustainable resources. I think that they probably want a bigger splash for their first campaign. So even though this is funded, I wouldn't be surprised if they canceled this campaign before Tuesday and relaunched later. However, if you don't do a lot of crowdfunding, just know that if you pledge something like this and they cancel the campaign, you will never be charged. You don't get charged until the campaign successfully completes. So I think this looks like a really good game, and I want to recommend this to people. I think it's worth a look, but I also want you to know that you could potentially pledge it and the campaign could be canceled, in which case it'll probably relaunch later and you can jump onto it then. But they may not cancel it. They may just go with it. So check this campaign out. If it appeals to you, back it. It may very well, it is funded, it may very well go into production. So this is a game for 1 to 6 players. It plays in about 45 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and because it's Queen Games, we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low. I've talked about how simple the game is. Essentially what's going to happen is at the start of a round, dice get rolled and they get placed in an order, and then players have to determine whether they want to execute using those dice from left to right or right to left. There's kind of a little chunky puzzle that evolves as you're executing this, in one direction or the other, and choices tend to compound on other choices over the course of this game. I think if we're boiling it down to a mechanic, it's simultaneous action selection, because the dice will get rolled and then players will all be doing this simultaneously on their individual player boards. It's designed by Dirk, Henn, who's designed some big kind of cornerstone games and board games. That includes Alhambra, Shogun, and Wallenstein. The art on the game is by Patricia Limburger, who's worked on 12 Thieves, Alhambra, and Skylands, and it's being published by Queen Games. They're probably best known for Alhambra, Amerigo, Fresco, Lancaster, and Shogun. There aren't a lot of pledges for this particular campaign, so if you just want Powerline, you can pledge the $40 pledge. It's called Powerline. Boom, that's going to get you the game. There aren't really add-ons, there aren't upgrades, there aren't deluxe versions, there's just Powerline. However, you can order a bundle that will get you Powerline with the latest revised version Alhambra. That pledge is $69 and it's called Powerline plus Alhambra. Then as add-ons, you can also get Alhambra as an add-on. $30 for the revised edition of Alhambra as an add-on. You can also add on a game called Metro for $25. That is the extent of the pledges and the add-ons. Shipping in the continental United States has been estimated at $9 or $12. $9 if you're just getting Powerline, $12 if you're getting that Powerline and Alhambra bundle. And if you add on games, like if you add on Alhambra separately or Metro or both of those, that probably will bump your shipping up a little bit as well. And finally, Queen Games is planning on delivering Powerline in October of 2022, which is very, very soon, which is one of the reasons that I think they may possibly keep going with the campaign even if they don't do huge business, because they already obviously have the wheels in motion. This game has to already be designed and produced and ready to go, which isn't always the case on Kickstarter. So it's very possible they may just continue with the campaign, deliver this thing very soon as planned, and then maybe they can get more business in the future, including it as an add-on in future Green games in Queen Games' new series. We'll see. We leave Gamefound to go back to Kickstarter for a game called Nanolith. Nanolith had a minimum required funding goal of $19,000. They're currently at $174,000, which is about 9 times that minimum required funding goal. Nanolith is going to complete its funding on Wednesday, September the 14th. This is a game for 1 to 4 players that plays in about 1 to 2 hours. Complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this game at high. Nanolith is a cyberpunk-themed dungeon crawler. It's been co-designed by Mark Schwamline and Maximilian Witt, and it has art from Douglas Duarte, who worked on Anime Saga and Connecting Flights, as well as August Graham Nakamura. It's also being published by Woodpecker Games. They're keeping it relatively simple with the pledges and add-ons for Nanolith. There are 2 pledges. Essentially, one's a base game and one's a deluxe game. So for $80, you can pledge Awakened Hero. That's going to include the core game, the stretch goals, and Kickstarter exclusives. For $109, you can pledge at the Remembering Hero level. That's going to add on the deluxe box, the deluxe stretch goals, and the deluxe campaign exclusives. Okay, so what are those? What are the deluxe editions? Well, they're going to include hero miniatures, acrylic player boards, custom dice, acrylic tokens, and an arena game mode and boss fight. So those are the upgrades that you're getting if you go with the deluxe version. Shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $10 or $12, so it just depends whether you're getting the standard version or the deluxe version. And Woodpecker Games is planning on delivering Nanolith in June of 2023. Next up is a solo game called Legacy of You. This had a minimum required funding goal of $14,000. It's already at $153,000, which is 11 times that minimum required funding goal. The kicker is, though, I'm recording this on a Thursday. That campaign debuted 2 days ago on a Tuesday. So it's a shorter campaign, which is why I'm already highlighting it, even though it's only been out 2 days. It completes next week. So it's a shorter campaign, but they have just done gangbusters already in the time that they've had. I have a feeling that maybe because it's a solo campaign, they thought, solo backers would be more aware. They would either just jump right on it. They didn't need as long a campaign as they usually do for other Garphill games. So just be aware. If solo games are something that you like, if you like Garphill Games stuff, this is a game that you may want to jump on, and it has a shorter campaign it's going to be completing next week. In fact, it will complete its funding on Thursday, September the 16th. And as I already mentioned, this is a 1-player game, plays in about an hour. The complexity on the game appears to be medium light, but it's sort of pushing over into the medium heavy area. So it's kind of medium light, but right on that line. And we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low because it's Garphill Games, and they've always done a fantastic job, and they've delivered many a campaign. It is a solo only game, so it is a game that you can only play by yourself. It's a campaign game, so there are actually going to be 7 games in a campaign, and then when you're done, it is fully resettable. So it is something that you can play over and over. There's going to be variability to it. Mainly it's deck building, but there's other mechanics as well. But it is a fully resettable 7-game campaign for solo play. Now, it's been designed by Shem Phillips, who's best known for Architects of the West Kingdom, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Raiders of the North Sea, Raiders of Scythia, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. The art on it is by his brother Sam Phillips, who's previously worked on Circadian's First Light, Hadrian's Wall, and Raiders of Scythia, and it's being published by Garphill Games, who are best known for Architects of the West Kingdom, Hadrian's Wall, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Raiders of the North Sea, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. This is a super simple campaign. It is a solo game. There's not a lot of extra stuff to it, and Garphill Games always does a really good job of keeping extras to a minimum, although they do like metal coins, and also keeping shipping low. So for this one, you've got one pledge level. It's $42. It's called Legacy of You. That will get you this game. Now, because there aren't as many extras as some of their other campaigns, where they have expansions and they allow you to buy other things. So it seems like in this campaign, since there's not a lot of expansions, it's just a simpler solo game, they've tended to focus a little bit on the other games that Sam Phillips has done the art for, which include Hadrian's Wall and Raiders of Scythia. So that's more what you're going to be seeing as other options in the Pledge Manager's add-ons. You can also add on additional copies of Legacy of You, $42 each in the Pledge Manager. You can also, for $7, add on additional copies of the 2022 Kickstarter promo pack, but you will already be getting one with your pledge for Legacy of You. So you don't need to add on another one unless you want extras for some reason. For $42, you can also add on Hadrian's Wall, which is a very busy, lot going on, kind of big and expansive roll and write. For $54, you can add on Raiders of Scythia, which is, I haven't played it, but I know it's sort of a reimagining of Raiders of the North Sea with both expansions, I believe, kind of baked into one complete game with new art from Sam Phillips. So Raiders of Scythia is much like Raiders of the North Sea, but it is its own game, different art, and I think they've combined both, or some of both expansions in different ways. It's not like a one-to-one perfect translation. There are some changes, I believe, but it's very similar to Raiders of the North Sea. For $40, you can add on the Actor promo, which is made up of 7 cards. There are additional cards for Hadrian's Wall. One of them is a rule set, and 6 of them are cards that you actually play with. And for $4, you can also add on Huntress and Stableman, which is a small little mini expansion for Raiders of Scythia, with shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $10. So if you're getting Raiders of Scythia, your shipping's $10. Might go up a little bit if you're throwing in additional games. And finally, Garphill Games is planning on delivering Legacy of You in July of 2023. Next up, we're going to take a look at Sea of Legends, Vengeance of the Empires. This had a minimum required funding goal of $60,000. They're currently at $226,000, which is about 4 times that minimum required funding goal. This one's also going to complete its funding on Thursday, September the 15th. It's a game for 1 to 5 players, plays in about 45 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Now, this is a narrative driven game. It takes place in an open world. There's dice rolling in it, but I think the key mechanic here is narrative choice and paragraph. So you're going to be choosing different options, like from a storybook. There will be other things that happen mechanically in the game, but the main thing seems to be just kind of choosing where your story is going and things happening based upon your choices. This newest expansion is designed by Michael Kint-Dalzin, who designed the original Sea of Legends, as well as Zach Weissman, who's worked on Gotham, Menu Masters, and the original Sea of Legends. The art is by Ekaterina Chesalova, who's also returning from Sea of Legends, and the game is being published by Guildhall Studios, who put out the original Sea of Legends. So everybody's back for this expansion, which is always a good thing in my opinion. There are 5 different pledges here, and the game largely revolves around different factions and sea captains. So most of the expansions, they're all about getting more sea captains and more factions. So for $75, you can pledge for the Vengeance of the Empires expansion. That's going to come with 4 new captains and 4 new factions. For $75, you can also pledge for the Rise of the Ancients expansion. That one comes with 4 new captains and 5 new factions, as well as component support for you to be able to play the game with a 5th player. If you don't have that expansion, you won't have the components to play at a 5th player count. For $100, you can pledge Sea of Legends base game. That comes with 4 captains, 5 factions, and the components for 4-player games. For $140, you can pledge both expansions. It'll save you $10 because pledging them separately, they'd be $150. So you get them both for $140, and that's obviously for people who already have the base game. And then finally, for $225, you can pledge the base game and both expansions. Now, let's talk a little bit about the add-ons as well. For $40, you can buy something called the Bob Cal Captain Set, which is going to include 8 more captain figures. But they are alternate sculpts, so they are designed to use the same powers as captains in the base game. So you're not getting anything new gameplay-wise, you're just getting different figures that you can use in the game. For $30, you can add on a neoprene mat. For $25, you can add on metal coins, and you'll get 70 coins with that. Also for $25, you can pledge for metal notoriety tokens, and those will include 50. Shipping in the continental US is being estimated at $25, $28, $33, $41, and $47. $25 is for either of the single expansions. $28 is for the base game. $33 is for both expansions. $41 is for the base game with 1 expansion. Now, there isn't a pledge for that, but you could, let's say, pledge for the base game and then add on an expansion. So if you did that, then your shipping would be $41. And $47 is the estimate for the pledge with the base game and both expansions. Finally, Guildhall Studios is planning on delivering Sea of Legends Vengeance of the Empires expansion in March of 2024. So that is a year and a half off. It's not 2023, it is March of 2024. Trailblazers had a minimum required funding goal of $15,000. They're currently at $211,000, which is about 14 times that minimum required funding goal. I think this might be the highest multiplier of all the campaigns that we're looking at today. So this one is also going to complete its funding on Thursday, September the 15th. It is a game for 1 to 8 players, and it plays in about 30 minutes, so it can accommodate more people, but it's still a quicker playing game. The complexity in the game is being estimated at light. Unfortunately, we're going to have to put the risk for this campaign at high because it's by a newer publisher, but I like the designer. He's made a couple of really good tile placement games already, and this one is designed to be lighter and something that can kind of be played on the go in different places, and I'm not too worried about it. I feel the need to keep the risk at high just because it's a new publisher, but as far as new publishers go, this one is being headed up by the designer, Ryan Courtney, and he's got his shit together. So I think that as Bitewing produces more games, you're going to see the risk level go down very quickly. Now, as I mentioned, this is a tile placement game, and it's designed by Ryan Courtney, who's previously designed Bear Raid, Curious Cargo, and Pipeline. The art on it is by Seth Lucas, and the game's being published by Bitewing Games, which is, I believe, Ryan Courtney's company, and this is their first game that they've published, and the first Kickstarter that they've run. Now, they've got 3 different versions of the game that you can pledge. First is $34. It's called Trailblazers Super Travel Edition. It comes with a clamshell and a carabiner, and it's got cards that are waterproof, they're very durable, they're made from PVC, but this is a smaller version of the game, so there's only 176 cards in this version. It is the smallest version of the game, but it has high quality components, and it's intended for you to be able to travel and take it places, maybe camping, where the cards need to be able to stand up to weather and possibly water. So it is a more durable version of the game, and it's smaller in terms of having less cards, only 176 cards. Now for $49, you can pledge the Trailblazers Standard Edition. That's going to give you normal versions of cards. So the cards in this version are not these super durable PVC cards that are waterproof. These are normal cards, but you're gonna get 339 of them. So it is twice as big. You also don't get the clamshell or the carabiner. This is the standard edition. This is is kind of meant to be played at home. And also for this version, you're going to get 186 wooden figures, meeples, and resources and things that you'll be using in the game. You don't get those in the travel edition. Now for $79, you can pledge the Trailblazers Deluxe Edition, which kind of combines both of those versions and then upgrades it a little bit more. So in this pledge level, you will get the clamshell case and the carabiner, but you will get a full card count of 339 cards, the same as in the standard edition, but they're all going to be that durable, waterproof PVC material. Also, those wooden tokens from the standard edition are going to be upgraded even more. They'll be screen printed, and that makes it the most highly produced version of the game that you can get, and it also has all of the durability and waterproofing in it. So it's just the best all-around version of this game. There is one add-on that you'll be able to get in the Pledge Manager. It's $10. It is 2 mini expansions, the Animal and Adventurer expansions. And if you're pledging the Deluxe Pledge, then the add-on will only cost you $5 instead of $10. Shipping in the continental US is being estimated at $9 or $13. I believe it's $9 for either the Super Travel Edition or the Standard Edition, and $13 for the Deluxe Edition. And finally, Bitewing Games is planning on delivering Trailblazers in May of 2023. Next is a game that also just launched 2 days ago. So this is another short campaign. They're already doing fairly well considering, it's only been out for 2 days at the time that I'm filming this video. It's called Rivet Wars Reloaded. They had a minimum required funding goal of $57,000. They're currently at $216,000, which is just under 4 times that minimum required funding goal. Now, this one's going to complete its funding on Friday, September the 16th. It plays 1 to 4 players in 30 to 60 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Rivet Wars Reloaded is a tactical miniatures game. It's designed by Matt Hart, who's previously designed Dark Souls, the board game, Guild Ball, and Resident Evil 2, the board game. Jamie Perkins, who worked on Monster Hunter World, the board game. And Ted Terranova, who worked on Rivet Wars Eastern Front, which is the game that this has sort of been redesigned from. Art on this newest iteration is by Doug Telford, who's worked on Bardsung, God Tear, and Guild Ball. And this is being published by Steamforged Games, who previously have put out Dark Souls, the board game, Guild Ball, and Resident Evil 2, the board game. So this is a big, expansive miniatures tactical game. There's a lot of stuff, and it's being divided through 4 different pledge levels. For $139, you can pledge the Veterans Pledge. This is for people who already have a previous version of the game and they want to upgrade it. So it's going to come with an upgrade box, the Nemoan expansion, the Hero Plug Duo, and then only if you pledge while the campaign is still live, the Viking Hero Pack. Then for new backers, the first pledge you might want to pledge is the $150 core pledge. That will get you the core box, the Vanguard expansion, and again, if you do it while the campaign is live, the Viking Hero Pack. If you do these pledges after the campaign has closed, like in a late pledge through the Pledge Manager, you won't be getting the Viking Hero Pack. But if you're pledging live, you'll be getting that Viking Hero Pack no matter the pledge level that you pledge at. For $396, you can pledge the Gameplay All-In Pledge. That's going to take that core pledge and add on to it the Nemoan expansion, the Aerial Aces expansion, the Blight reinforcements, and the Allied reinforcements. For $445, you can pledge it the Deluxe All-In Pledge. That's going to take the Gameplay All-In Pledge that I just talked about and add in 2 more things, a Terrain Upgrade Pack and a Component Upgrade Pack. Now, if you want to piecemeal this and get some of the things as add-ons, you can do that. The Nemoan expansion is going to be $135 as an add-on. For $100, you can add on the Aerial Aces expansion. For $150, you can add on the Allied and Blight reinforcements, but those come packaged together. So they would have probably been about $75 separately. They're not available separately. They're just available together for $150 as a bundle. For $35, you can add on the Component Upgrade Pack, and that's going to upgrade things like dice and coins, from cardboard to metal. So a coin and dice upgrade pack. And then finally for $45, you can add on that terrain upgrade pack. Shipping in the continental US is being estimated at $25 or $39. So $25 for the 2 cheaper pledges, $39 for the 2 more expensive pledges. And then Steamforged Games is planning on delivering this latest version of Rivet Wars in February of 2024. And again, that's 2024, not 6 months from now in 2023, but a year and a half out in 2024. From there, we go back to Gamefound for a game called RoboMon. This one had a minimum required funding goal of $50,000. They're currently at $159,000, which is about 3 times that minimum required funding goal. RoboMon will also complete its funding on Friday, February the 16th. This is a game for 1 to 2 players, so it has a smaller player count. And the playtime that they list for this one is 5 minutes to 1,500 minutes. So they are looking at it, and I've seen a couple other games do it, they're looking at it in terms of an ongoing campaign game. So something that you put away, you save, and then you bring back out, not individual play sessions, right? Makes sense. You wouldn't have an individual play session of 1,500 minutes, right? Complexity in the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Now, this is an exploration-focused, story-driven, open-world game of robot combat. It's been designed by Gabe Barrett. Previously, he's worked on The Final Frontier, Hunted Kobayashi Tower, and Hunted Mining Colony 415. The art is by Liam Cuthbert, John Merchant, who's worked on Adventure Tactics Damian's Tower, Squire for Hire, and Squire for Hire Mystic Runes, and Jorge M. Velez, who previously worked on Hunted Kobayashi Tower and Hunted Mining Colony 415. Finally, the game is being published by Barrett Publishing, which is Gabe Barrett's company, and so they've published his games, which include The Final Frontier, Hunted Kobayashi Tower, and Hunted Mining Colony 415. There are essentially 3 different pledge levels for RoboMon. For $79, you can pledge RoboMon, which is the base game. This is a very story-driven narrative game. It's got like a storybook. So that base game will come with a 300-page storybook, and you'll be journeying through it in your gameplay. For $99, you can pledge RoboMon plus expansion, and that's going to give you an additional storybook. This one's 50 pages, which is about 1/6 of that original 300-page storybook. So the expansion then should be about 16% of the size of the base game. And they've also got new cards and new tokens and things like that. So there'll be more components coming in as well as a new storybook. For $125, you can pledge RoboMon plus expansion plus deluxe components. That's going to include a set of deluxe wooden resources and a synthetic leather card holder. So it looks like leather, but it's not. And it's a card holder. It's going to hold your cards because this game is themed kind of like a combination between Pokemon and robot-themed toys. So it's like a robot-themed version of Pokemon. So essentially you're going to be collecting cards as you're playing this game. That's part of the goal of it. So this will give you a nicer way to keep those cards collected in this faux leather binder book. You can also get either one of those 2 upgrades in the Pledge Manager as an add-on. So if you don't want both, if you don't want to pledge that higher level, you can just get that faux leather card binder as an add-on for $15. You can also get just the deluxe components for $15. They've got one flat estimate for continental US shipping, which is $16. And then finally, Barrett Publishing is planning on delivering RoboMon in August of 2023. That brings us to our final campaign of this video. It's called Uluk. It is back on Kickstarter. They had a minimum required funding goal of $15,000. They're currently at $30,000, which is about 2 times that minimum required funding goal. Uluk is going to complete its funding on Saturday, September the 17th. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, plays in about 45 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. This one is a worker placement game, a lighter worker placement game. It's been designed by Dominic Sidorek with art by Premislaw Ghoul. He's previously worked on Slyville, Starscrappers Orbital, and Stormweaver. And the game is being published by Hexy Studio. They've previously published Hard City, Starscrappers Cave-In, and Starscrappers Orbital. This is sort of a simple campaign setup with not too many pledges. There are 2 pledge levels. For $45, you can pledge the core game, and for $81, you can pledge the all-in set. The all-in set comes with the Ancestral Spirits expansion, the Wrath of the Gods expansion, and the Monument set. You can also, if you don't want all 3 of those, you can get the core game and then get any combination of those 3 as add-ons. For $18 as an add-on, you can get that Monument set. These are monuments that you're going to be placing around the board, and these are miniatures, basically. If you don't get that set, you'll just be using these standees that come in the base game. You can add on either of those 2 expansions for $16. So $16 will get you Ancestral Spirits as an add-on, and that comes with secret objectives and some new cards. So it'll give you objectives that you can be working on during your gameplay. Whereas $16 for the Wrath of the Gods expansion will get you more cards, and that expansion is more focused on events. So things that will come out every round that you'll have to deal with that will make the gameplay a little bit more unpredictable. So events in that one and objectives in the Ancestral Spirits. Shipping in the continental US has been estimated at either $12 or $16. 12 for the standard version, 16 for the all-in, and Hexy Studio is planning on delivering Uluk in May of 2023. Now, I normally would talk to you about which games, which campaigns from the previous video I personally backed. There was only one game, one campaign that I talked about last week, and that was for Barbaric. And I did not pledge that one personally. I thought about it, but there are a lot of games coming up in the next few weeks that I'm really, really interested in. I'm not completely sure which games from this video I'm personally going to be pledging, but I have my eye on 2 of them. I'm pretty sure I'll be pledging 2. It could be more, probably not. I'm probably going to try to keep it to 2, but if you're curious about what those 2 games might be, then come back next week and I'll let you know which ones I pledged. Now, for next week's video, which is going to be even more massive than this one. I know I'm playing a couple games this weekend. One of them is going to be Origins First Builders. So I'll be talking about that and at least one other heavy Euro in next week's video in the played games section. I'll probably also try to get in some lighter games and maybe some solo stuff as well. But definitely Origins First Builders and one other heavier Euro. And then I have right now, I think it's 16 different campaigns that I'm looking at including with next week's video. I don't expect all of them to make the cut, but I think there are 9 or 10 that already have. So if you are wanting a little bit of a preview at what campaigns that I'm going to be talking about next week, it's probably going to be Kinfire Chronicles Night's Fall, Dwarves Legendary Forest, Fugitive 2nd Edition and Run, and that campaign is over on BackerKit. We've only seen a couple campaigns that are primarily on BackerKit so far. So that's one of them, and it might not be a place that people are regularly looking at. So if you're interested in that, which is from the publisher of Burgle Bros and paperback and hardback, you can go over to BackerKit to take a look at that. I'll also be looking at Space Explorers Age of Ambition and Prehistory's Evolutions. That is a campaign on Gamefound for 2 expansions for 2 different games, Prehistories and Space Explorers. That'll be in next week's video. I'll also be looking at Weimar, The Fight for Democracy, which is a new war game from the designer of Watergate, Dawn of Ulos, Merchant's Cove Mastercraft, Forsaken, which is being published by Game Trays Labs. So Game Trays, you know, the company that makes all those great little plastic trays, they are now dipping their toes into publishing board games, and Forsaken is the first one that they're doing, and it looks pretty cool. The Fox Experiment, which is the latest design from Elizabeth Hargrave, the designer of Wingspan and Mariposas and Tussie Mussie, and Quad Hero 2nd Edition, which is this elaborate production. It has components that remind me a little bit of Chip Theory games, and it has these really interesting miniatures. They're cubes, but they've got personalities, and you'll be rolling them around on a game board, and as you roll them on different sides of their body, you'll trigger different actions. So that campaign looks pretty cool to me. I already talked about it when it was up previously, but they canceled it and relaunched. So I will also be talking about that one in next week's video. So there's a lot of stuff. There are 5 or 6 more games that I may or may not include, but I'm pretty sure that that list of games I just mentioned will all be included. So let me quickly mention the one game that I acquired into my collection since the last video, and that is Trudvang Legends. Trudvang Legends is an exploration-focused, story-driven adventure. It's a campaign adventure. It was put out by CMON, and they've just shipped the core box, as CMON often does. So they're just delivering the core part of the game. There will be other boxes to be delivered at a future date. I don't think I'm going to be playing Trudvang Legends anytime soon. I've already talked about today how Kristen and I are in the middle of a campaign of My City. I think we'll probably next be playing a game called The Initiative, which is by Kori Konnichiwa, and it's a campaign game. It's puzzly though. So I think we're going to stick to those types of games for now and kind of play through some of the lighter campaign stuff that I have that I don't think people will be interested in watching, because one of the plans of this channel is to launch a Twitch channel by the end of the year, and I'll be playing lots of stuff on Twitch eventually. And I want that to include a lot of the really cool big campaign games. So I think Trudvang Legends will probably be something that I'll be saving to play on Twitch. In addition to the Twitch channel, there's lots of big changes coming later in this year. I'll be launching a Patreon. I'm getting new camera equipment in. I'm currently in the process of completing an upstairs studio space, which will be a little bit easier to film in with less noise, easier to control the light. And I'll be getting new lights and some new cameras and things like that. I'll also be starting to put out new kinds of videos. Once I'm all done with this, this is all taking a lot of time. So once I'm done with all that, I will have a lot more time and I'll be able to produce more videos, and I'll be producing new kinds of videos, including teach and reviews. So that's another thing that's coming in the future. So again, if you've enjoyed this video, stick around. I'll be putting out one of these every week for the next several months. That'll be the main focus of this channel. And then hopefully by the end of the year, all these upgrades and things will be done, and you will then continue to get the Kickstarter weekly, but there will also be teach and review videos. There'll be gaming, streaming on Twitch. I'll have a Patreon so that people who are really enjoying the channel and want to help ensure its future can do it that way if they so choose. Until then, the best way to help support me in the growth of the channel and the continuation of the channel is to just like the videos and to subscribe. So if you haven't done that yet, please consider that. I'll be back next week with another enormous double-sized Kickstarter weekly. I'll be playing Origin's First Builders this weekend and talking about that, and another game as well. And I'll have a lot of campaigns to talk to you about next week. So in the meantime, have a great week, play lots of great games, and I will see you very soon. Meet me back here in a week's time, and we'll be looking at a whole new set of campaigns filled with stuff you may want to back and acquire into your own collections. I'll see you very soon. Take care.